Filibusterismo is the second novel written by Dr. Jose Rizal, which is said to be the continuation of the Noli Me Tangere. Dr. Jose Rizal is one of the most influential thinkers of the Philippine Revolution, and it's not courtesy why. His writing as well as the organization were essential to writing Filipinas into rising up against Spaniards, even after his death. His world-famous duology is Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo have been passed down for generations for young Filipinos to read and study. Before we proceed, let's have first a quick background. El Filibusterismo is first published in 1891. This novel is sequel to Noli Me Tangere. It has a little humor, less idealism, and less romance than the Noli Me Tangere. It is more strategic than the first novel. And this time, we will be focusing on the Dan El Filibusterismo. As you can see, it is very old. Written here is my name because I want you to know that I bought this when I was on grade 7 because I was very curious on the novels of Dr. Jose Rizal. And this is a Filipino version of El Filibusterismo. Now, before we proceed, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Princess A. Enfimo, and today, my task is to discuss the El Filibusterismo, its characters, and the chapter 1, which is on the upper deck.
So, our story begins on the steamboat Tabo as it makes its way up the Pasig River from Manila on its way to Laguna de Bay. The boat is split into two decks. The top, that has all the illustrious and rich passengers, and the bottom, where basically everyone else is staying. Among our passengers on this ship are Ibarra, who is now known as Simon, the rich jeweler, Doña Victorina, the ridiculously pro-Spanish Indio woman who is in search of her estranged husband, Paulita Gomez, the pretty and rich orphan niece of the Doña, Ben Zaib, a prolific Spanish journalist, Padres Sibilia, Camora, Salvi, Irene, and Florentino, Don Custodio, a high-up and well-respected pro-Spanish Filipino, Isagani, Padre Florentino's nephew, as well as the lover of Paulita, and Basilio, if you can recall from the last book, the son of Sisa, who is now about to graduate medical school, thanks to his patron, Capitan Tiago. Simon, as mentioned before, is now bitter and cynical, and only believes that violence and sabotage is the only way to overthrow the Spanish government, and he plants himself as an agitator and saboteur, violently siding with the Spaniards and encouraging abuse against the masses, which would stir up a revolution, basically making himself the bad guy, which I find very admirable. He lost everything and returns willing to lose everything a second time so the revolution may push through. Anywho, Simon is able to smuggle firearms into the country through Quiroga, a rich Chinese merchant that owes Simon a great deal of money. On Christmas Eve, Basilio is back in San Diego, which is the town where Capitan Tiago lives and is also the place where the events of Noli take place, and slips out into a forest property that was once owned by Ibarra to visit the graves of his mother Sisa and the revolutionary Elias. So, when he gets there, he finds that he isn't the first to arrive there, and surprise, surprise, it's our old pal Simon. So stuff happens, lives are threatened, revelations are made, and Simon tries to get Basilio to join the revolution, using what happened to his mother and brother at the hands of the Spaniards against him. Basilio is understandably shaken up by this, but tells Simon that he'll still have to think about it. See, Basilio is in love with this girl named Juli, who is the daughter of Cabezang Tales, a man who had once been successful, but had everything stolen from him by the friars. And, while trying to guard what he had left, he was captured by bandits that held him at a very high ransom. And to pay that ransom, Juli had to offer herself as a servant to Hermana Penchang, a pious Catholic. Basilio heard about all of this, so with his savings, he freed Juli from her obligations to Hermana Penchang and bought a small house that Juli and her grandfather, Tandang Celo, could live in. The wedding was going to be a very big event, so naturally, a lot of very important Spanish officials and people would be there. He would give the newlyweds a beautiful-looking lamp that was filled with a highly explosive chemical nitroglycerin. When the lamp began to dim, someone would move over there and relight it, causing the nitroglycerin to explode, setting off the gunpowder that laced the corners of the house, causing an even larger explosion, killing everyone inside. Later, Basilio wanders near the ill-fated wedding and runs into Isagani, the crestfallen lover of Paulita. seeing as the house was rigged to explode, Basilio, the highly intellectual person he is, tells Isagani Simon's entire plot. Isagani reacts about as well as you'd think, and rushes into the house as soon as the lamplight began dying, and tosses it into the river, diving in as well not too far after. This ruins the entire scheme, and Simon is exposed as a traitor, eventually ending up being chased by the Guardia Civil with guns, again. When the house failed to explode, the rebels took things into their own hands and attacked all too early, and were destroyed by the Guardia Civil. So, if you weren't keeping count, Simon is now on the run from an angry government and an angry band of rebels. Wounded and ruined, Simon makes his way to the home of Padre Florentino, who takes him in and tries his best to heal him. A couple of days later, Padre Florentino receives a letter telling him to warn his Spanish guest that the Guardia Civil were coming in a week's time to arrest him and that they were armed with guns. Don Tiburcio, who had been there the entire length of the book, takes one look at the letter and yeets off. Simon hears about the letter and, deciding that dying was better than being captured, takes poison. On his deathbed, Simon tells Padre Florentino everything, his full name, what he'd been doing, the full nollie, and Padre Florentino listens to the full story, and this takes the better part of the day. And when all that is said and done, Simon finally and does actually die.
So, there you have it. After a several batch of love stories, those plans gone wrongs, and many characters. That is El Filibusterismo. And this time, I am introducing the characters of the story. This time, for us to have a better understanding of the chapter 1, which is on the upper deck, we will be going to have a Tagalog version of its story. So, let's get started!
Naglagalag ako at nagsikap makaipon ng maraming salapi upang maisagawa ang aking layon.
Isang araw ng Disyembre, naglalakbay ang Vapor Tabo sa Ilog Pasig patungong Laguna. Nag-uusap sa kubyerta ang mga pasahero. Kapitan, bakit hindi pa tulunan ang barko? Sasadsad tayo sa bukiring iyan, Dunya Victorina. Habang pinagtatalunan ng mga sakay ang pagpapatuwid sa palikulikong ayos ng Ilog Pasig, nagsalita si Simon.
Ang lunas ay napakadali, humukay ng kanal sa Maynila, magbukas ng bagong ilog at tabunan ang Ilog Pasig. Sa panukalang ito ay malaking pera ang magugugol, Ginoong Simon, at masisira ang kabayanan. Pwes, sumira, gamitin ang mga bilanggo at bihag upang walang perang gugugulin sa paggagawa. Kung hindi sasapat ang taong bayan ang sapilitang pagawain, sa ganyang paraan nayari ang malalaking piramide sa Ehipto, ang lawang Mujeres at ang Koliseo ng Roma. Ngunit, maaaring magbunga yan ng paghihimagsik. Nagalsa na ba kahit minsan ang bayang Ehipto? Pero hindi na kayo kaharap ng taga-Ehipto. Ang lupaing ito ay maraming beses nang naghimagsik dahil sa sapilitang paggawa. Ang mga pulong na ito ay hindi na muling maghimagsik. At kayo, Padre Salve, ano ang silbi ninyo mga praile kung maghimagsik ang bayan? At huwag kayong bumanggit ng mga pangangatwirang pawang kartungdakan. Siya'y isang napakawalang utang na loob at alakayin pa ang mga bagay na ito sa vapor pa naman. Nagpakahirap na ako sa isang tunay na panukalang matipid at kapaki-pakinabang upang linisin ang mahabang wawa sa Laguna.
At maaari bang malaman kung ano yan?
Pilitin ang lahat ng bayang magkakatabi na mag-alaga ng pato at mga hayop na ito sa pamamagitan ng panginginahin ng susong maliliit ang magpapalalim ng lawa.
Maaari ko ba isulat ang tungkol sa bagay na iyan? Pero doon ko studio, kung lahat ay mag-aalaga ng pato, dadami ang balot. Mabuti pa itabunan na ang wawa kaysa magkaroon ng maraming nakakadiring balot.
Sana'y di maglalaro